If you love those who love you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak love those who love them. And if you're good to those who are good to you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak do that. Love your enemies. Be good to them. Share with them without expecting anything in return. Then your reward will be rich, and you will be sons of the Most High. He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be compassionate like your Father. How much of that do we practice on our planet? Divine love is a love that we have inside of us because it's the only thing we have to give away. That's all we can give away. Again, Patanjali, when you are steadfast, this is who Jesus was. This is who Rumi was. This is who Shams of Tabriz was. This is who Muhammad was. This is who Buddha was. When you are steadfast, which means there's no ego, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's who St. Francis was. And some of you I recognize and know, so some of you may have heard part of it, but I never give the same talk twice anyway. So, and if you've heard it before, you're hearing it again because you haven't got it yet. So, otherwise you wouldn't be here, because everything is perfect. It's basically the essence of what I speak about in Wishes Fulfilled, is the idea that there is a higher place. There's a place that I call higher consciousness, or extraordinary awareness, extraordinary levels of awareness. And it seems to me that the problem that most of us face in attempting to really fulfill our Dharma, our real mission here on this planet and what we're doing here, is that we have been raised to believe in so much in our limitations. And we just haven't been raised to believe that we are God, that we are pieces of God. It's all over the spiritual literature, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita or the Tao Te Ching or the Quran or the Old Testament and the Torah, the book of Torah, or the New Testament and the words of Jesus. It's all throughout it. You know, you've all been told you are God, but we've all been raised to believe, or most of us have been raised to believe that that's something outside of us. And that we've created these great organizations. I always love Gandhi's comment when they asked him about Christianity. He said, I don't very much like your Christianity. He said, but I love your Christ. Making a huge distinction between, and I used to say years ago that, and they asked me about organized religion, that a truth is a truth until you organize it. And then it becomes a lie. Because so much of the problem, so much of the difficulty, the struggle, the conflict that we see on our planet is all done in the name of God, which is so absurd, isn't it? And yet that's what's going on. And as I told you yesterday, in studying just the 13th century for the last 10 days or so in preparation for what we're going to do in Ephesus, it's just one big conflict after another. And it's not just conflict the way, it's not just wars. It's things like crusades that are just, so vicious, and going through village after village after village, and just, if there's 60,000 people, just killing every single one of them. for God, so that God would be happier if we do that. And I was talking to my friend this morning, Elizabeth, we were having breakfast, and she said, well, at least we're more civilized now than we were then. We don't go around doing that. And I said, well, we've just created newer ways and newer terms to define our abilities. I mean, our technology is almost always based on weaponry and killing each other. And now we just have to push buttons in air-conditioned booths, and we're much more civilized. But we can knock out millions of people at a time. At least in those days, you had to go kill every one of them. Now it's just no, we're not. And the 20th century was the bloodiest century in the history of humanity. More people killed in those wars in World War I, World War II. So, and I really feel that I incarnated into this planet to do something about that. And in writing this whole past summer, I can see clearly now as I look through the things that were happening to me, and I'll be sharing some of those with you a little bit later this week. The things that I was being directed to do. And I don't think that I'm any more special than anyone else and deserve any more credit for any of it. I just seem to have been selected for some reason to, I call it ascended master training. In fact, I read an entire book by Saint Germain called Ascended Master Training. And every time I would read it, I'd say, well, I've been in this. It doesn't say mastery. I'm not talking about that at all. I haven't mastered any of this. But it was, I've been at this since I was a little boy, and realizing it. And even though I've been encountering difficulties with organizations and with institutions and with customs and so on, all things which I've not paid too much attention to, there's just something in me. And I think about it because my mother told me the day that I was conceived, because she was basically raped by my father in one of his regular things that he did when my mother was with him. He would come in drunk, and then, they were married, so it's not considered rape, but he would force himself on her, and she had had 2 children, one just who was 3.5 and one who was only 15 months old. And at that time, when I was conceived, was only 7 months old. So I was conceived on the 1st of September, 1939. And she remembers it. And she was horrified that she was pregnant again. There was a depression going on. It was a crazy time in the world. And I don't know if any of you know what that date was, the significance of that date, September the 1st, 1939. Anybody know what happened on that day? It was the beginning of World War II. It was the day that Hitler invaded Poland, and World War II started. And I've always had a sense of that. I know we show up here. Not in the ways we have a tendency to think that this is, it's our mother and our father, and that's how it all works. But I really know better. I have 8 children. I really know better. If any of you've read Wisdom of the Ages, the last chapter in Wisdom of the Ages, I talk about the conception of my last daughter, which was an absolute impossibility. There was just no way that child could get into this world. We had 7 children, 5 in 8 years. I was 50 years old. There was just, and we were in a place called Brisbane in Australia, and at the Hilton Hotel. and it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know I was going to tell this, but I often tell it when she's in the room, and she goes crazy. Her name is Sage Ikus. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning. It was actually 4:07. As I looked at because there was just something strange going on in the room. It was like, my wife was in the bed next to me with our son, who was, she was nursing. He was only a year and a half or so old. I was in the other bed with my daughter, Serena, who was like 3. She's here in the room, probably just gagging that I'm telling this story. Are you in here, Serena? Did you leave? Oh, there she is. Yeah, you're not throwing up or anything. About to. She's now 27, and all of a sudden the furniture is being rearranged in the room, and my wife is up, and she takes our son and puts him in the bed, and then picks up Serena by herself, this 3.5-year-old child, and puts her in the bed, and then gets into bed with me. Now, this is something she had never done in her life. So she proceeded to get into bed next to me and start doing things that she had never ever done. I mean, when all of those things happened, that was me doing that. Moving things around and trying to talk her into this and all of that. It was not her nature. And my wife had had surgery, and she had had one ovary removed, and she had had half of the other one removed because she had had a tumor on it. She hadn't had a period in 10 years because she had been either pregnant or nursing for the previous 9 or 10 years. So she was always, she used to say, in 1 decade, I went from a 32 long, no, a 32C to a 32 long or something. It was like 34. I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult her. Anyway, but she always had a great sense of humor about it. So, I mean, the idea of her getting pregnant was absolutely impossible. But just to be absolutely certain that that didn't happen, I just withdrew at that moment, to make sure. And I was going to call my daughter withdrew. So, like, what happened there? I mean, it's like, and this is where when I was speaking the other morning about you get to a place in your life where you get to begin to realize that there is something bigger moving these pieces around, and that who we are not really the product of our parents. They're just sort of intermediaries in this whole thing, and that and so. When you think about when you came into this world, you came in at the time that you opted to come into this world. And it's a hard thing to get. My daughter Serena sitting over there, I used to say to her when she would get upset with me, because, she used to have this whole line, it's like, if I would raise my voice, I wonder what all those people out there would think of Mr. Positive if they could see him here this morning, She'd ask her sister, would you buy a book from someone who yells at his 11-year-old daughter? I wouldn't. But anyway, you get to this sense where you begin to realize that there's something moving these pieces around, and that it's not you. My friend Ramdas often says, all my life I wanted to be somebody. Now I'm finally somebody, but it isn't me. And that, when we look at quantum physics and look at, where we began, we realize that we're not really here as human beings having a spirit. We're spiritual beings. Infinite spiritual beings, and it's such a hard concept for us to get to wrap our heads around and our minds around this idea. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says that you're doing nothing. You're just being done. All of us are just being done. And in reading Rumi and in studying what I've been studying and in writing what I've been writing the past couple of months, it's this enormous awareness has come over me that really our mission is really nothing more than to just reconnect to that source from which we all originated. You know, T.S. Eliot said, "We shall not cease from exploration, but at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time, to know it, to absolutely know it." And he was speaking about death. And when we die, when we leave our bodies. I'm not here today and this week. I'm speaking about something very different. That we can, while we're in these bodies, there is something available to us. Wishes Fulfilled was my effort to just speak to that and to try to delineate it and to make it specific about the kinds of things that we can do to reconnect to our source and to come to know God, not as something external to ourselves, but to know this highest place within ourselves, to absolutely know it. So what I encourage you to do in the next week on this boat is to one day by yourself or with someone that you're close to, someone that you may have come on this trip with, and go to the stern. That's the back. The place that isn't going forward, that's that one back there. And to just go there and lean over the rail, if there is one. This is the first time I've been on this ship, but there's usually a railing back there. And just observe what you see happening. And just look down at the water. Now, I'm telling you, I did this, I was on board ship for almost 2 years in the Navy when I was at 18, 19, and almost 20. And I spent a lot of hours late at night by myself looking at that big ocean. I was in the Pacific Ocean. And it just goes forever, you know. I saw a Discovery Channel story of how the Earth was formed, going back billions of years and so on. And they said these oceans were formed because it rained for 1 billion years. That's a long reign, isn't it? A reign for 1 billion years to fill this planet with. Why? I'm not sure. I mean, they were explaining all of that. But so you look at this huge ocean that we're in, and just look down at the water and ask yourself, what do you see as you're looking at the water? Just please try to do this. And what you will see is something that has a name that we call it. In English, it's called the wake. The wake. And ask yourself 3 questions about the wake. But this is a metaphor for your life, because this ship is a symbol of your life. You are this big physical thing that is moving through the atmosphere, moving through the world. And so just imagine yourself as the ship, and you're looking down in there, and ask yourself these 3 questions. First of all, what is the wake? What is it that you're looking at? You'll see that white, bubbly water, and you'll see it, and you just keep looking at it and looking at it. You can stay out there for hours and hours. And I'll give you the answer. The answer is the wake is the trail that is left behind. Okay, that's what it is. And there's hardly anyone in here can dispute that. Is that correct? I mean, we all have agreement that the wake is the trail that is left behind. The boat's going this way, the wake is back there, and it's just a trail that is left behind. Then the second question to ask yourself is what's driving the boat? That is, what's making this boat go in this direction? And I'll also give you the answer to that. That it's the present moment energy being generated by the engine and nothing more that is driving the boat. And the third question to ask yourself about this, and the most important question to ask, is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? Okay, so the wake is a trail that is left behind. Can the trail that is left behind make the boat go forward? So now you have to look at your life and all of the things that have transpired in your life and ask yourself what's making your life go in the direction that it's going. Well, it's the present moment energy that is being generated by your mind, by your thoughts, that is making your... And one of the great ironies, I've been studying some of the teachings of a man named Bashar. Anybody in here ever hear of Bashar? Fascinating. Kind of a weird guy, but very, very interesting information. I'm going to be, in one of the satsangs, I'm going to give you a couple of readings from, he's channeling, very much like Abraham Hicks and so on, channeling information. And when he talks about these different dimensions of being, he calls them densities. So in this third dimension, or the third density, we have something called cause and effect. So you do this, and it creates this, okay? And we have a tendency to believe that when I do this, it makes this happen. And then he said we move into the fourth density. I'm not going to go into all of this now, but into the fourth density, in which there is no cause and effect, in which every single moment is disconnected from the next moment, and that the present is not created by the past. This is just something to really ponder, because it's going to get really good when we get to the satsang. The present is not created by the past. The past is created by the present in the fourth density, in the fourth dimension. And that's the dimension where you leave the world of cause and effect, and you realize that everything that ever happened to you up until this moment happened to you in the present. And in quantum physics teaches us that there is no such thing as time, and it does, that it's all one, especially in the world of spirit, in the world of God, it's all one. Then the past is something that we are creating now. And the idea, this exciting, exquisite idea, that you can change the past by becoming something different in the present, becomes a reality. Now, you're all saying, that's just too far out, I can't do that, that's just too weird, I can't do that. But the truth of it is, for 1/3 of your entire life here on this planet, while you are asleep, you're able to do just what I just described. You can create any past that you want. And you have left this dead thing laying on the bed. It's just, you've just left, life has left it, it's just there. And you're off someplace else, creating the past that you want, right? And creating the future that you want. I had a dream recently in which my wife was waiting in a van with 5 of our children, who are the age they are now. 30s, 33, 31, 29, 27, 25, 23, 19, 14, 12, 11. It just goes forever and ever. I'd have 8 children. Okay. So anyway, the van was, and all of them were in there. And I was coming out to meet her, to get into the van with her. She was driving, we were going to go someplace. And I was saying goodbye and telling each one of my children in this room, who were 3 and 5 and 7 and 9 and 11, and then I left them and went from that moment right into this moment where they were 25, 27, 29, 31, 30, all in the same dream. It was all, and the interesting thing about these dreams is that all of it made perfect sense. You relate to that? Can you see what I'm saying? That where higher consciousness is something in which we can create a whole new way of being when we get past, and then he talks, that's the fourth density, or the fourth dimension, where you begin to realize that there is no cause and effect, that everything is just, one moment is not connected to the next. What you did a month ago is not connected to what you are doing today, even though this linear mind of yours has convinced you that it's absolutely why this happened. The fact is, in a quantum sense, everything is being recreated every moment, every moment. Your whole body is being recreated every moment, every moment.